Welcome to Fraser Mac Gaming. I'm Fraser Mac. On today's video I'm going to be chatting about Yooka Laylee and all things new about Yooka Laylee and the Impossible Lair. So if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. But without further ado, for those of you who are not familiar with Yooka Laylee, it was a 3D Kickstarter funded collectathon that was really developed by ex-Rare employees, around half a dozen ex-Rare employees, to be a real spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie and kind of lend elements from games like Donkey Kong, things like that. But obviously the N64 era of 3D gaming, where it kind of really took off. And obviously since Rare was bought by Xbox, a lot of these classic franchises, a lot of these franchises that the Nintendo fans really dearly love, kind of my generation and people maybe slightly younger, slightly older, they really enjoyed those games that started the 3D adventures. They've not really had their fix since then, except for in the form of kind of Mario. But those classic franchises like Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong, really, they haven't had 3D games, or they haven't had games at all for people to enjoy. So Yooka Laylee, it was funded by a massive £2 million Kickstarter fund. It's been out on the Switch since December 2017. It had some issues in its development. There's some, time was taken. It was delayed to get some extra polish into the game. It received some criticism, and probably some of it was quite fair, for issues with the camera and a little bit of signposting issues, some general gameplay problems. But overall, it ended up sitting on a 75 on Metacritic, which is probably a fair, result. It's probably a good game, but I think hype had just been built up so much because of nostalgia and the anticipation for a game like this, and the real need and want for a game in that sort of 3D open world collectathon style. The news we got at E3 was obviously that Yooka Laylee was going to be taking on in Yooka Laylee the Impossible Lair and moving on and into a kind of 2D and 3D adventure, so a bit of a hybrid game they call it. So 2D platforming levels, but a 3D overworld to explore, and really collect elements. So Yooka and Laylee are both returning, but there's obviously some interesting new puzzles, some new aspects, and really lending a lot more from your 2D Donkey Kong games in terms of the platforming and the 2D levels. So I was really excited when I saw this. Obviously there was a lot of kind of showing off of the game at E3. It was in the presentation, but then there was a treehouse presentation as well. So some really exciting elements. It looks fantastic. The graphics, the design and the work that goes into it, it looks fantastic. It looks really special. It looks like a AAA production. All credit to the devs. They are very, very experienced. I saw a kind of review video on YouTube that they did an interview about their development and their career, and also the hopes for Yooka Laylee. I'll put a link in the description down below. But Yooka Laylee Impossible Lair, it's the kind of game I'm dying for. I love Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I'd love to see another Donkey Kong game, but this looks great. Now, Yooka Laylee Impossible Lair obviously was showed off as part of the treehouse. It did look good. It's got some great ideas, some great elements. They did have a couple of problems where things either didn't work, or I remember some elements where they needed a key to kind of pass through a certain level, and for some reason the game wasn't quite working.
And something...
Can't pick the key up.
Can't pick the key up. This is a really difficult puzzle because Gary can't pick the key up.
It doesn't have a release date yet. It's obviously going to come out in 2019, or it's scheduled to. There's obviously details out there about physical releases as well, so all collectors like myself, you can get a physical copy. You can pre-order it now. It's only between £20 and £30, just depending on where you shop around, so similar in dollars. But it really does look like a Donkey Kong Country game. Obviously different characters, but the detail in the backgrounds, it's almost 2.5D. It looks really special. I'm really excited for this, and even though there were some hiccups, the game isn't finished yet. I'm hoping that they'll be able to patch that and improve it. It looked really impressive though. I'm surprised people aren't talking about it more, because I think action platformers are really like the bread and butter of a lot of Nintendo consoles, and there's so many fantastic franchises that Nintendo's built their success on. Obviously Mario, there's been Mario Maker 2 recently, which is taken a lot of the news. Fire Emblem's now out, obviously had a lot of praise, but I don't think Nintendo makes these real 2D kind of collectathon games as much as they used to. Obviously Mario moved into 3D again. Mario Maker 2 is more self-creation, it's more fan-based, so it's slightly different. It has obviously a story mode, but Yooka Laylee, I think there's a gap there. There's not a Donkey Kong game listed or even rumoured at the moment, this is definitely filling a gap, and I think later in the year there'll be less competition for it if it releases before 2019, if it stays on course. I think that there's obviously games like Pokemon, there's Luigi's Mansion, which is a bit more kind of exploration 3D, very different, very big game I'm excited for, but there's not something like this. I think, Astral Chain, end of August, is going to be a big game. Obviously Fire Emblem at the moment, it's getting rave reviews, but the Pokemon games, these are very different. I think again Zelda Link's Awakening, very a kind of old 90s style game, but it's top down. It's very different. It's a Zelda audience. I think this is filling a really, really desperate need for a lot of gamers, definitely for me as a platforming fan, a kind of 2D platforming fan. And you look at the gameplay, it looks smooth, it plays well, the levels are so colourful. There's some fantastic elements, and they're taking some of those ideas from Yooka Laylee, the 3D version. Obviously the platforming kind of story, the colourful characters, the background, and even like a game like Yoshi earlier this year. I think Yoshi had some fantastic level design. Difficulty wise, it's there to be accessible, but I think it looked great, it played great. It was a collectathon, but the challenge was in trying to collect everything without dying. I really enjoyed it. I loved Yoshi. I think Yoshi doesn't get enough respect really from gamers. It has a really hardcore audience, but it's not the same scale as the big franchises. But in terms of Yooka Laylee and the Impossible Lair, there's just so many interesting things about it, and obviously the nice quirks that they've thrown in there, that there's 20 levels, but obviously there's elements probably like in Mario Maker 2 where you can almost switch it up and then it changes the levels. So there's a kind of elements of the weather, or things that you can adapt in a level, and all of a sudden it will switch from being a dry level to being a water level. It completely changes it changes the platform, and it changes the challenge, changes the gameplay. And there's a lot of variety, basically, that these 20 levels, you can adapt them, something will shift, and it becomes something completely different. And I think that's just a brilliant idea. I think it's really interesting. But the really cool part is essentially in the overworld, the whole challenge is you've got to rescue royal bees and find collectibles, but you've got to go and defeat the Impossible Lair. So there is a level that's accessible from the very start, where if you can play through it, it's called the Impossible Lair for a reason, but it is possible to pass it. The whole point is, if you can pass that without collecting any royal bees, just on the lives you have initially, which is very limited, you can complete the game. So for speedrunners or real quality gamers, someone's going to set an incredible time. It's made for speedrunners and for people who've got really, really fast twitch reflexes, real expert gamers. I hope the controls obviously hold up to help those people. But essentially you're going through these levels to collect royal bees so that you can then have more lives and make it easier to try and pass through that Impossible Lair. So it looks great. You're obviously taking on Capital B again, and trying to save those royal bee guards. But the latest news we had recently, there's obviously been an update just recently from Playtonic. Obviously sold out or doing the physical copy, but it's going to be 60 frames a second gameplay on Switch. So that was the latest news. We got an updated trailer which just looks fantastic, showing off more of the different levels you can get, and then the effects when they transform. So you've got that 40 levels almost in total afterwards, but it's showing off more of the variation and the transformations of the levels. Just showing off the gameplay and how smooth it is, how fast it is. They're obviously teasing more and more of the music. So composers who worked on classic Rare games, is it Grant Kirkhope? He's obviously working on Yooka Laylee games, producing some great music, stuff that is really iconic, up there like those Nintendo franchises. So it's great to see this coming to Switch. It's great to see more details. I'm really hyped for it. I want more people to talk about it. I think it's going under the radar at the moment. I think they're obviously going to build and find a window when it's been polished enough, but also that probably suits the game, gives it a window to really flourish. So, because I hope Playtonic really does grow. They were talking obviously starting off smallish, and they're always a bit of an offshoot of Rare anyway, but they want to make sure that they've got that autonomy. They talked about having overlapping games in development at the same time, so they can almost have a constant flow of a team working on a project that's finishing up, but then one that's working on the next idea, building something, and they can almost just kind of overlap and kind of team up, work together, and get a process of bringing out a number of games. So it'd be interesting to see what other IPs they think of. I think we could see Yooka Laylee establish itself as a kind of successful kind of second tier game quite soon, and then I'd love to see what else they could do. But that is the updates on Yooka Laylee The Impossible Lair. Hope to see more info on a release date soon. I hope you've enjoyed the video and really liked the content. If you like what you've seen today and you want to see more, I've got plenty of videos on the channel about all sorts of games that are releasing. I'm going to release more stories about upcoming games and previews as well. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and tell as many of your friends as possible. Join the Fraser Mac clan, and I'll see you on the next video.